Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Federico Talks Watches. Today I'm going to talk about a few more, because I've already done this previously a long time ago, a few more entry-level watches that are actually very high-end. Now, of course, before we get started, customary wristwatch check. Today I'm wearing my Piaget Polo 485. Flyback chronograph GMT, big old boy, absolutely love it. I got it because I used to work for Piaget. I actually realized that the buckle, the micro adjustment was off, so let me just stick that back on. And also, guys, don't forget to check out DelReyWatch.com. We just got in a few very cool watches, including a Tudor Black Bay GMT, box papers, and one of the cheapest ones on Earth, or at least in the US, hell of a bargain. We got in a Vacheron 1942 triple calendar, one of my favorite Vacherons ever made, with that beautiful cream dial, teardrop lugs, kind of Goudron case, and a manual wind movement. This is a killer throwback, and an old classic, a Girard Perregaux WWTC, but not any WWTC World Time. This is the financial World Time, which also tells you when the major markets are open: New York, Tokyo, London. Very hard to find this watch. There was none for sale on Chrono 24. These come around only once every couple of years at Del Rey Watch, and we finally got one now. Check it out, link in the description below. So anyway, guys, same premise as the older video I made. These are not I'm not calling these watches entry-level, but these are entry-level watches in a particular brand. So to give you an idea, in Patek Philippe, an entry-level Calatrava is very entry-level compared to their high-end. They treat things entirely differently. Everything from the finishing to the materials to the level of detail. But not every brand is like that. Some brands are a lot more even, and they treat the entry level just like their higher end. Obviously less complicated, but there is no massive difference in the process. A brand like this is Lange, and if you guys want to see the older video, just search up Federico and entry level. Anyway, I want to talk about a few more brands that have entry-level watches that are actually very high-end, that are not cost-cut versions of their higher-end pieces. And I'm going to start with Sinn. I love Sinn. I know you guys love Sinn. Not everybody knows what Sinn is, but for those that don't know, it's one of the few real tool watch companies left. Yes, I've said I don't necessarily love their designs, and I stick to that, but I do love their watches. And their entry-level offers great value. The movements don't really change a whole bunch from their entry-level to their high-end. It's ETA, Salida, Fair. So the movements are very much the same. The finishing doesn't really change, and also the finishing on the case doesn't really change. Sure, some of the higher end Sinns have extra technologies like some marine steel or those capsules that show if humidity's gotten in, but those are more features. But they don't treat their entry-level Sinns any differently than their higher-end Sinns. The finishing's the same, the materials tend to be the same, the dials aren't any more special. So actually, you get a very similar experience whether you buy a pre-owned $1,200 Sinn or one of their high-end limited editions. And I quite like that, and for a tool watch, it's very hard to beat Sinn. Now, Baume Mercier. I love Baume Mercier. I know they're not doing very well, and I know a lot of people don't love them, but their entry-level version of the Baumatic is great. This has the same movement architecture as entry-level Vacherons, a brand that is many times the price. Same movement architecture as the Cartier in-house movements. Now, they make a COSC version of this and a non-COSC version of this, but the finishing doesn't really change. It's just the regulation. So material-wise, watch-wise, you get pretty much the same Baume Mercier. Yes, they don't necessarily have a super high-end model, but there's very little variation between their entry-level and their high-end. And I actually find this watch very high-end because of, as I said, the sharing of the architecture between the much higher-end Richemont brands. It's a little thing that probably Richemont doesn't want you to know, and a lot of people don't know, but technically, if you get a Baumatic, you have very similar architecture, not the same obviously, but very similar architecture than an entry-level Vacheron. Is that a great thing for Baume Mercier or a bad thing for Vacheron? I'm not entirely sure. I'll let you guys decide. Now we go to Omega. Now, Omega's entry-level model, at least popular here in the US, is the Aquaterra. And there isn't a lot to distinguish the Aquaterra from their higher-end brethren. You still get the coaxial movement, still got a lot of stainless steel models. The finishing on the case is very similar. The finishing on the movement is very high-end machine finishing. You get a ton of watch for less money than their, quote-unquote, higher-end models. The Aquaterra is actually quite high-end. You get a ton of variety in dials, layout, sub-seconds, no sub-seconds, strap options, but everything from their clasps to the steel, to the coaxial movements, it's all very, very similar. And there's not a lot to differentiate this entry-level Omega from its higher end. Now, last but not least is a brand that I love and I consider high-end anyway, and that is Nomos. Now, Nomos has gone higher end lately with their Matic movements, the Lambda. They've even made a couple watches in precious metals. But if you get like an entry-level Tangente or Orion, they're treated very, very similarly than their higher-end models. The movements are still made entirely manufactured in their factory. They still use the same Horween straps. The stainless steel is the same. The case finishing is the same, and the dials are, very Spartan as Nomos does. There's not a lot to differentiate an entry-level Nomos from a high-end Nomos. Now, obviously, the high-end Nomos, some of them have their new movement, and you can even get a gold version, but these are outliers, right? I consider an entry-level Nomos still a quite high-end watch that beats a ton of pieces in its price point. I think an entry-level Nomos beats the living crap out of an entry-level Longines or Tag Heuer. Actually, Longines makes some great movements, but their low-end is absolutely awful. And the low-end Tag Heuers, I say the same thing. Nomos, their low end is still relatively high-end. And that is something that you have to commend them for. Anyway, guys, that is it for today. But as you see, while some brands have this massive spread, others keep it relatively tight. And you can still get the full brand experience even if you get one of their quote-unquote lower-end pieces, and they end up being actually quite high-end. Anyway, guys, please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Really does help. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more content. And of course, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.